Good morning, everybody. How are you? Morning, afternoon, whatever you. Most of you are going to see this on replay anyway. It's the Gold Goats and Guns half hour. My name's Tom Luongo. I hope everybody's having a great day, or at least as good a day as you can have, given the situation. So let's get right to what I want to talk about today. I just published a blog over at my site, goldgoatsandguns.com, entitled "The Harder the Winds of War Blow, the More They Suck." So, as a reference to the original tagline from Full Metal Jacket, if you one sheet for Stanley Kubrick's classic film, that's where we are today. I'm not going to mince words here. I think it's pretty silly to do so, given the gravity of the situation. Right? We all know. Anybody with 3 working brain cells knows that this was a false flag. As a matter of fact, the Russians are coming out and saying that they can't even find any evidence that there was a chemical attack of any form. And that the whole thing, whatever we've seen, is just staged. We're beyond at this point, we're actually beyond even like putting up a credible illusion that there was something happened here. At least last year, some people actually died. The cause of that death, the cause of those deaths last year, which were all regrettable, of course. That was what was in question. And the idea that there would have been, still to this day, that the idea that last year and this year, that President Bashar al-Assad in Syria would do this at these moments in time, when he's winning, is just otherworldly. It doesn't make any sense. It does make sense to frame him for this, because who benefits from a chemical weapons attack? Which, by the way, don't remember. No less our embarrassment of the UN, Nikki Haley. She's not the ambassador, she's the embarrassment. And the French president himself warned the Syrians and the Russians against using chemical weapons a month ago. Like, duh. A week after that, the Syrian Arab Army finds a chlorine gas chemical weapons facility in eastern Ghouta, operated or owned by Jaish al-Islam, who, by the way, are on their way to Jarablus in the north of Syria to fight the Turks, because the Syrian army negotiated a withdrawal to save civilian lives. If you look at the video footage of what's coming out of eastern Ghouta, the Syrian army is not being met as a bunch of oppressors. So, what are we doing here? Why is Donald Trump going along with this? Why is he sending a carrier group to the Eastern Mediterranean? Why are the Russians having to fly, Su-34s or Su-35s with anti-ship missiles? I just saw this on Twitter and on Fort Russ. Flying, patrolling the skies above the Hamilton Air Base in Latakia. We're going to go to war here? I know a lot of you want to believe in that and trust in Donald Trump. And I want you to understand that I would like to also. I want to believe that. But the truth of the matter is that when you start to look at the record over the last 16 months or so, there's nothing to trust. At every turn, when faced with escalation on the part of the neoconservatives and the foreign policy establishment of Israel, the United States, and the UK, Trump caves. and does what they want. More sanctions? Okay. I got to sign it. There was a 90, the Senate, I can't veto that and send it back to the Senate and force them to own it. Nope, I can't do that. Got to sign it. Yep. Oh, there was a chemical weapons attack that nobody can prove? I'll just go off half-cocked and I'll lob 53 Tomahawk missiles at the Syrian airbase. We kill some folks. And scare the shit out of Xi Jinping, who knows that Trump is not a rational actor now. This is not 4D chess, guys. Okay? So, he's besieged. Every time he tries to virtue signal that he's going to pull out of Syria, there's a chemical weapons attack. There's a ratcheting up of war drums. So do you really believe what he campaigned on? Or do you believe, like everybody else always says, it's one thing to believe something when you're a candidate, but then the minute you get into office and you get the real information, we saw this asshole on fucking Tucker Carlson's show last night pulling us that line. Well, when you get the real information as president, then, your attitude changes. Yeah, it comes down to your attitude changes because that's what we want you to believe. Trump is now in the same position that Barack Obama was in. He was elected for hope and change. He was elected to drain the swamp. Within 16 months, they both became incontinent warmongers and appeasers of the deep state. Trump is an appeaser. He's not even an alpha male. An alpha male stands up to this and goes, fuck you, and sends people to jail. The alpha male stands up and is disagreeable. The alpha male stands up and says, no, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. Why? Because it would be catastrophically bad. I'm not even going to invoke the line from Ghostbusters. This would be catastrophically bad. So I'm sorry to say that everybody wants to believe, he's going to pull it out in the end. Fine, I hope he does. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I get to come on here next week and issue a mea culpa and say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gone off the Trump train. I'd be happy to. I'll be happy to. I'm not laying odds on that. And neither should you. I sit here and I had an argument in the comments of the last YouTube I did with Omega Shock, who called me an idiot for not understanding geopolitics because he, had to explain to me the basics of why Israel is acting the way they are. Like, I don't fucking understand any of that shit. Like, I don't understand any of this. I don't understand Israel's dynamics. I understand that Israel attacked that night in order to try and provoke a response from Syria and the Russians in order to ensure that we go to war. I don't know that it was put forth by the Israeli government per se, or if it was the Israeli deep state, or if it was the Mossad, or if it was this one. It doesn't really fucking matter. Somebody that, in a situation like that, with everybody on edge, lobbing missiles and taking a target of opportunity to attack both Gaza and the T4 airbase at the same time, is monumentally irresponsible. And it's one of the downsides of Trump's steadfast backing of Israel, which I understand is a necessary precursor to any grand bargain in the Middle East. I understand that. I'm the one who's arguing for it. But at the same time, Trump has to tell the Israelis, stand down. But he won't do that. He's got too many war hawks in his cabinet. He's got too many people who want to see Iran wiped off the face of the planet. Now he has more of them. Tell me I'm wrong. Want to believe that, he had Bolton under control. He doesn't have shit under control. Robert Mueller just raided his lawyer's office. Via the Southern District of New York, betraying attorney-client privilege over something wholly unrelated to Mueller's mandate, daring Trump to fire him. Rosenstein is daring him to fire him so that they can bring impeachment proceedings against him, even though no one actually wants that. Well, aside from the loony left. Fuck the loony left. Most of the country doesn't want this. Does not matter. The powerful elite in Washington want it, and it's going to happen. Trump has been neutered. He is not in control of anything. Period. If you think that he still is, you are deluding yourself. He'll be lucky to last out the next 2 months. There's going to be no peace offering in North Korea. The Russians are going to have to two-step around this in order to try and get out of it. William, I'm not arguing with you. William Justice says, which president would have had it all under control under this attack? None. I'm not damning Trump. I'm not damning him here. I'm just telling you the reality of the situation, or the way I see it. I'm not saying that he's a bad person for not standing up to this or not being able to. I mean, what are you going to do? Putin wrested control of Russia through a lot of questionable activities, questionable actions. He had a lot of people killed. He had a lot of people put in jail. He nationalized Yukos. He did all sorts of shit. He still pays for those actions in order to stabilize Russia. Trump hasn't been actually willing to do any of that. He's only virtue signaled that he's willing to go after these people. He hasn't actually done any of it. And sure, at a certain level, you play some judo and you let them out themselves, and then you reverse everything on them. I get it. I believe that's what he was doing, but he's not in that position right now, and I don't think it's rational to think that he is. It's easy to bind down one man. He has a family, he has a wife, he has a young child. It's not too hard to figure out where this leads, okay? It's not tough. And Trump's personal failings, his personal weaknesses, are being used against him in every way. Don't do this thing that he's got this whole thing under control or that he's playing 4D chess, because he's not. I believe he's smarter than his opponents give him credit for, but I don't think he's much smarter than anybody. I think he's not nearly as smart as people want to believe that he is. I don't discount what he has done. What he has done has been good up to a point. But again, presidents are allowed to screw around with domestic policy. They're allowed to tinker at the edges of domestic policy and get some wins there in order to stay relevant and stay in power. It's how you keep the base from completely jettisoning him. You can't have that either, because that would be chaos, and chaos is bad for financial markets, which is what this is all about ultimately in the end anyway. Don't ever forget that this is all about maintaining status quo on the verge of a complete financial collapse. Okay? You don't completely weaken a U.S. president to the point where he's unfunctional on any issue, on every issue, because then he can't actually keep the country running. Because when people start to lose faith in the governmental structure, they lose faith in the currency and the bond markets, and the world can't have that. So they're giving him the Faustian bargain. And if Trump is truly a patriot, which I believe, I fundamentally believe that. I fundamentally believe he went in with the idea that he was going to be able to change things. And he's being allowed to change things at a domestic level. But foreign policy is off the table. Foreign policy is that which you are not allowed to change. Period. It's always been this way. Been this way for the last 60 years, guys, 70 years. It's been this way forever, to be honest with you. Okay? Because there are bigger things happening globally, at which at this point, the United States is in charge of managing. And that's not to be changed. So you can hope that Trump is going to change those things, but he's not going to. And that means a confrontation, and a possibly deadly one, with the Russians and the Chinese. By the way, Xi Jinping did not cave on auto tariffs this morning. He talked around it and through it and everything else. He didn't give any specifics. But the market's reacting like they are. The base is acting like Trump is winning on all this. It's bullshit. The Chinese haven't done anything yet. Until they actually do something. No. What they are doing is putting radar scramblers in the Spratly Islands. Okay? What they are doing, what I saw this morning, I haven't been able to find it again because somebody asked me on Twitter just now. Is, are the Chinese moving missile frigates in to support the Russians in the Eastern Mediterranean? I saw this on Zero Hedge this morning. Could have swore. Could have been Zero Hedge or Fort Russ. Can't remember now. But either way, and yes, User 13, you're absolutely right. He was on the verge of major foreign policy wins. And the deep state can't have that. Israel can't have that. Israel does not want Syria stabilized. They want Assad overthrown. They want the Christian Alawites wiped out. They want Iran to not function in Syria. And they're willing to start World War III to get it. And the neocons, and they're using each other. I mean, this is where I do agree with Omega Shock. He said to me, you don't understand that Israel's being used by the neocons. I'm like, they are kind of the same thing. And the part of Israel that I'm talking about here, the Israeli government, the Israeli deep state, they have this common purpose. They have common purpose. The neocons want control of the world. They want to destroy Russia. The Sheldon Adelson wing of AIPAC and whatnot, they want the Russians destroyed as well. They all hate the Russians. They always have. They understand that you can't have a stable Russia that's not under the thumb of the United States if the United States is going to take over to keep the control of the world. Because if the Russians pursue their own interests, the whole global power base changes. It's still the Wolfowitz doctrine. It's still the Brzezinski doctrine. He who controls Central Asia controls the world. This is nothing new. And they're going to play it all the way to the hilt. They're going to play it all the way to the end. They're going to play it until the point where we have to ask ourselves the question, what do we want? Universal serfdom under their control, or World War III where we get nuked? Your choice, you got 24 to 48 hours. Now, the carrier strike group's not going to make it over to the Eastern Mediterranean until about the 22nd or so, about 10 to 12 days. So therefore, there's actually that amount of time for this whole situation to be diffused, right? And the Russians will turn over all of their findings. The United States will not accept them because we're not listening. We're not listening. We want war. We want to destroy Iran. Mattis wants to destroy Iran. Bolton wants to destroy Iran. Bolton wants Sunnis in charge of Syria. That's how crazy he is. That man wants Sunni Wahhabist, head-chopping Salafist assholes running Syria. Because that would counter Iran. Because these people are all that fucking crazy. At the end of the day, both Iran and Israel are fucking scared to death of each other. With good reason. But there are two adults in the room that should be acting like adults and not like children. One of them is acting like an adult, the Russians. The other one is acting like a bunch of spoiled children, the United States. Because the United States, in order for any kind of grand bargain or any kind of peace, has to be complete submission. There is no definition of peace with U.S. and British oligarchs. Because don't kid yourself. The British royal family and the rest of them are all behind this shit as well. This is just British colonialism writ large. It's nothing new. A friend of mine said to me the other day, don't forget that everything bad that's happened in the last century and a half has come from the Britons. I've said this before. Make me sound crazy? Fine, go for it. Tell me it's not true. The only thing good that's come out of Britain in the last 100 years is Monty Python and Doctor Who. Maybe Top Gear. But I could even do without that. I mean, truthfully, at the end of the day. So, I mean, don't kid yourself. This is what's happening. It's in front of you. It's staring you in the face. What are we going to do about it? Are we going to sit here and continue to make excuses for Trump the same way that the Democrats made excuses for Obama when he rolled over, showed his belly, and then got to play around importing Muslims for the Democratic Party? Because that's what that was all about. Trump doesn't even want to play ball on that, and so they're gonna crucify him on that as well. You can't make excuses for him if he's failing. Okay? Praise his wins and lambaste him for his failures because he needs the support. He needs the support. Oh, I like that. No. Doctor Who. Doctor Who is good. Doctor Who is fundamentally libertarian. We'll have that talk one of these days, User 13. Trust me on this one. Doctor Who is good. Doctor Who is not British socialism writ large. He's actually the exact opposite of that, which is why Doctor Who is awesome. Doctor Who just doesn't use, for the most part, violence to solve his problems. And when he does, it always gets him into trouble. It's very libertarian. So, you don't have to like Doctor Who, but you should respect it. Because it's primarily the right thing. All right. So, where are we at? 22 minutes. So, what else did I want to talk about today? Oh, yeah. And so, notice how all this is happening at the same time. Right? So, you've got all this happening. So, on Friday, we got new Russian sanctions. Right? Going after Alexei Miller and Gazprom directly and a variety of other major Russian companies. On Saturday, we get a new chemical weapons attack, which isn't real. Then we get the Israeli attack to try and spark World War III, which didn't work. Then on Monday, Russian markets drop like a rock. Even though oil breaks out on a war premium, even though gold breaks out on a war premium, the ruble gets dumped, Russian stocks get dumped, and Russian bonds get dumped. All of us, like they have Ebola, for fuck's sake. That was Monday. On Tuesday, Gazprom reverses all losses in the market. Yes, so does, and the Russian MISEX gets back about half of them. As a matter of fact, I'll show that chart in just a second. I can actually show you that chart just to show you what I'm talking about. This is really kind of humorous, actually. Well, the Russian ruble is getting killed, but the Russian ruble can get killed in the foreign exchange markets because all of these are very thin markets. So I apologize if I'm not looking at the screen, the camera right now while I go through this and get this set up so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. Move this over here, and then we're going to do this. There we go, and then we're going to do that, and you get this desktop looks like. But what's really important here is this right here. Notice how yesterday, Gazprom, this is a chart of Gazprom, daily chart of Gazprom. Notice this huge thing here. What happened yesterday. Notice how the high was 141.22 rubles. Notice what happened the next day. That's today. Closing on 2/3 of that same volume, still 3 times normal volume, you see that we closed at 141.80, completely reversing this bar. So this bar was a complete breakdown bar. They were expecting to get a push and a liquidation. Notice how we got this long tail on the trading too, which could not close below this very important low right here at 132.80. Didn't close there, and then we got a snapback rally today. So the same thing is happening across the markets. Now the Russian ruble is getting killed, which is fine, and that's all to the better. So now the Russian ruble is getting killed, and oil's going up. This is only putting money in the coffers of the Russian government. It's only making it easier for them to survive this. So none of that actually makes any sense whatsoever. So what this says to me is that ultimately this was a coordinated attack on Russian assets. It was a coordinated attack on the Russian oligarchs to try and get them to overthrow Putin, to try and put pressure on Putin to stand down. Not going to work. What will happen next is the US and the UK will move to freeze Russian oligarch assets, which they haven't done yet, but they're about to. Part of the reason the ruble is weak at this point, part of the reason why you're going to have like upset in these markets as these oligarchs are smart, they're beginning to repatriate their capital. Okay, they're beginning to move that capital back into Russia. It's going to be hard for them to do, but they can do it. It'll be hard to move that money without getting killed, because just remember, when you're talking about moving billions of dollars through a small market, you're going to do so and move the price. Okay, and so. And large investors and institutional investors and whatnot, their trick is to sell without moving prices. It's very difficult for them to do. So understand that the Russian markets are going to be difficult to get a handle on. There'll probably be also some trading through backdoors through China and whatnot in order to get their money repatriated. It's going to be interesting to see how much of it they can get repatriated before it gets frozen. Okay. But a lot of these guys do have their loyalties are in the West still. And Putin's getting clarity from a number, has been getting clarity over the last couple of years as to who is actually still in the pay of the West and who hasn't and who isn't, and who's actually a Russian patriot and a Russian national by wanting to bring their capital home. So we'll see. Guys like Herman Greff, who run Sberbank, guys who like Loxley Miller and Igor Sechin, who run Gazprom and Rosneft, respectively, those guys are all effectively patriots. So they're not the ones we're worried about. We're worried about the second tier. Okay, we're worried about, and the interesting part is I think Zero Hedge had a great article yesterday about Rusal was one of the companies that was sanctioned, and its leader, Derspova. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. I know it, and I can't actually pronounce it. A little too hyped up. But there's a real worry in the marketplace that there won't be enough aluminum to supply the market at current price, and the aluminum prices are going to go. They already have started to go crazy. But I would worry. I wouldn't be too worried about the Russian markets at this point. I think that they're going to survive this just fine. This isn't like 2014 where the price of oil was getting crushed, and that's what was putting the pressure on Russia. Remember, at the end of the day, the Russians have gotten rid of most of their dollar-denominated debt. There's some still running around. There's some legacy dollar-denominated debt that's out there, but the U.S. ruble exchange rate really isn't all that important, especially the more that the Russians de-dollarize their oil and gas trade. Again, another reason why everybody's angry. Which brings me to my last point about the Nordstream pipeline. Notice how all of this is happening. That was on Monday. We had the crash in the Russian markets, and then today, what do we have? We have Angela Merkel come out and say, hold on, the Nord Stream pipeline can't go anywhere until we discuss what's going to happen with gas transits through Ukraine. As in, you were all for the Nord Stream pipeline bypassing Ukraine. You didn't give a shit about that for 3 years now, Angela. But now that you've been told, oh no, fuck you, gas transit still has to go through Ukraine, or we'll just get rid of you. We'll just get rid of your fat ass too. She got told. That's what that is. Because that's the first time she's ever spoken out like she's gonna block Nord Stream. She's been the only one actually advocating for it in all of Europe. She's been like trying to play this game where she's not really for it, she's not really against it. Now all of a sudden she's saying, we have contracts. I mean, this is crazy that she would do that. Because you have to understand that the contracts are all signed, the permits have been issued. This is an economic project. It's going forward. It's a major multi-billion-dollar investment project with multiple German companies on the hook for $4 or $5 billion in loans to Gazprom. And now all of a sudden she's saying, well, there's a political dimension to this as well. Really? And you expect to see more investment into the European Union under these circumstances. If any piece of news should tell you why the European Union is fucking doomed, it's this. Why would you do business with the European Union if at every turn, if you're politically inconvenient, if your project is slightly politically inconvenient, that they can just shut it down on a whim? Who's going to invest in them? Who's going to put their factory in Germany or France as opposed to Hungary? Aside from the fact that the euro is too freaking strong, the Hungarian forint isn't. Why would you do this? Why would you spend 1 minute thinking about putting your money in the European Union? The answer is, of course, is you wouldn't. See if I missed anybody's comments. I'm sorry if I missed your comments. I'll get back to the move. Ramby's Ghost, London mayor will confiscate a sonic screwdriver. Yeah. Could Trump end run the neocons by closing a deal with Kim before the announced summit date, according to user 13? It's possible. But, he doesn't, if he doesn't get, any treaty that he signs has to be ratified by Congress. But then again, the Korean War, he would be brokering a deal with the UN to end the Korean conflict, not the American Congress, because we didn't actually declare war on Korea. The Korean War was a UN police action. So Innocent Rush asks, so Bill Clinton bombed Iraq to distract from the Lewinsky scandal. I think we all know that the globalists want Trump to do in response to Stormy Daniels. Actually, there was a couple of missile strikes in Syria in response to Assad gassing his own people, so a few people can see history repeating here. Yeah, those are, I mean, they're trying to get Trump to do this, right? They're trying to make him act stupidly, the same way they did it last year. And they were really ratcheting up the rhetoric against him when the chemical weapons attack happened at Khan Shaykhun, and he responded. But you see, last year was different. Last year, Trump was trying to establish his bona fides as a strong leader. So from that perspective, it made sense to lob a bunch of tomahawks, knowing full well that, you know, Russian EW would probably send most of them off course, or, you know, make them land as duds or whatever. That's one argument for like the 3D chess model. I don't think that's actually what happened. I think what happened was what Cy Hirsch reported in his article last year, which said that Trump did go off the deep end. He saw the information. He was given bad information. He went off the deep end, reacted emotionally, and had to be talked out of going to war with Russia over this. And his military advisors offered him the, like, you know, the lukewarm option. Either no response, go to war, or lob some missiles and don't worry about it. And just make your statement, which is what he took. Well, Innocence, just reading the conversation here. The UK is a police state. Has been for a long, long time. I don't see how anybody lives there. I mean, I'm having a real hard time justifying continuing to live in the United States if this is the way things are going to go. So, the secret police, not so secret police, the FBI, just broke into a lawyer's office with no good pretext. And did it against a sitting president. If you're not scared, you should be. I mean, I hate to say this, but if you're not scared, what are you waiting for? Because you should be. Now, I'll give you 2 minutes of the opposite perspective, try and see if I can find a silver lining in this, and then I'm going to go. We're past the half hour mark. Great to see 14 people in the scope today, or in the live chat today. Absolutely great. I'll have this up on blog over goldghostandguns.com right after YouTube gets done processing. So the opposite side of this is that Trump is still playing possum, and that this is all just, we're going to ratchet things up to the moment of crisis, and then we're going to negotiate. Problem with that is that he's working against people who aren't bluffing. He's also got people who are allied against him who are not rational. And that's the part that scares me. Okay? And I fully want to believe that Donald Trump is in control of this. Don't get me wrong, I do. I really want to believe. I don't think he was in control of it last year. And I certainly don't think he's in control of it now. And he spends too much time watching Fox News. He spends too much time watching CNN. Cares too much about what people think of him to be president. Justin Raimondo's latest article, every time he writes one, I think it's going to be his last one, over at antiwar.com, because he's so sick. And Justin Raimondo is one of the great heroes of the American anti-war movement. And he said, you know, look, Trump's not smart enough to know what's going on. He's not that bright. His latest article is a scathing review of him, and with good reason. So, I'm telling you, this is you're being asked to make a bargain. Serfdom, we can get nuked. If somebody wants it. And if the U.S. loses here, yeah, I agree in a sense. I really do. There are too many forces here that think they can win a war with Russia. The neocons still believe that they can win a war with Russia. The timetable for them to attack Iran and effect a regime change in Russia is closing. Once Putin gets the new weapon systems deployed en masse, everything about the U.S.'s military logistical superiority evaporates. I mean, yeah, we still have thousands of nukes that we can lob at the Russians, but we're talking about conventional warfare, military logistics, being able to project force around the world. It'll be over. Don't kid yourself. Those underwater nuclear-powered cruise missiles can just wipe out our subfleet. You just saturate an area, 200-mile radius with 10 or 12 of those things and just blow them all up. Well, they're roughly over there. Fine, blow up. Just saturate the area. Will 6 do? Yeah, we'll send 8. It's not about creating tidal waves in South Carolina, off the coast of South Carolina. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with wiping out our subs and then wiping out our aircraft carrier. And, if they truly do have nukes that we can't stop, I keep reminding everybody, the American military commanders in Syria have gone bent over backwards over the last 3 years to ensure that they do not directly piss off the Russians. And when it does happen, it's usually negotiated down behind the scenes, and someone gets to find out just who ordered whatever the strike was. And it usually turns out that it's not the U.S. military pushing for it. It's some other group. It's the CIA. It's the Mossad. It's somebody else trying to set up a confrontation. Remember last year after Khan Shaykhun, after he sent those 53 Tomahawks in, the Russians cut off all communications. Their deconfliction line went dark. American planes stopped flying over Syria. They stopped flying over Syria. It took 2 weeks to get the Russians to turn the phones back on, because that's how deathly scared they are of getting involved in any kind of direct confrontation with the Russians, because they know what that leads to. Yes, and Mattis did admit that, and he also admitted that the chlorine gas attack from January, we don't have any evidence of that one either. None of these chemical weapons attacks have been real. They've all been false flags, all the way back to 2013. Every one of them. And the Warhawks, the idiots like Thomas Wichter and Charlie Kirk and the rest of them on Twitter, don't listen to a fucking word these people said. As a matter of fact, you should do what you should do is you should unfollow them, because they are fucking LARPing assholes. And they are warmongering, LARPing assholes. I think Thomas Wichter works for the fucking Saudis, for Christ. If you want my honest opinion. Okay? The reality is that this is much more dangerous than people want to believe. And I certainly hope I'm wrong. Because, I have a 12-year-old daughter. Or be wrong. I don't mind being wrong. On matters like this, happy to be wrong. All right, you guys have a great afternoon. I'm gonna pop out. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so. If you don't get the notifications for when I go live, you can get notifications by clicking on the little bell symbol. It should be on the YouTube page somewhere or in your notification settings. Turn that one on so that you can find out when I'm going to be on next, because I usually come on at random times every other day or so. So during the day. So if you want to listen to it live, if you want to participate, you've got to click the little notification button. You got to turn it to on always. Because if you just have it on every once in a while, if you have like the sometimes button option, that means you don't get anything. So, y'all have a great afternoon. You can follow me over at goldgoatsandguns.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728. You guys have a great afternoon. Keep your stick on the ice.